So if you were to bring the black share of wealth at least to the black share of the population, it would require an additional at least $10 trillion.
The 8th California Reparations Task Force meeting is scheduled for March 29th and March 30th.
All California Reparations Task Force meetings are open to the public and welcome public comment. Amend the Mass Media Group provides coverage of all California Reparations Task Force meetings. Tune in, tap in, and testify. Reparations Now, fam.
Even the Mass Media Group is almost there. We're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers.
ETM Media Group covers reparations, political news, and community issues impacting Black American descendants.
It's free and costs you $0.
So go ahead, like, share, support, and definitely subscribe.
Smash that bell, fam, to get information critical to the culture.
Help us get to 1K today.
Thanks in advance for your continued support.
And reestablish themselves with their indigenous families. The debate may continue, but there is one thing that I'm very clear about. Those who are descendants of slaves had and have the impact of that system living in them and either driving and altering their aspirations. Those who were free during that time frame also may be able to should be able to make their case about themselves, because so often, if you lived here in the 1800s or the 1700s and you were free, you still had the impact of slavery on your life. The ability to move, the ability to own property was often taken away. Many of you have seen the movie 12 Years as a Slave. If you were free, you had to validate your existence every day, and someone could take your identity card and tear it up, and you immediately became a slave.
Hey, family.
What's up going on? What's going on? Today is the day.
It's Lineage Eligibility Day Part 2.
8th meeting, March 29th and March 30th. So yeah, today's definitely a big day. About to make history.
It's a family affair.
You can say that again. I'm excited to see where this goes.
All right. Well, just a quick bit of housekeeping before we get into it. The Reparations Task Force meeting, 8th Reparations Task Force meeting is starting at 8:30 today rather than 9 o'clock start time. If you want to make public comments, you can head over to the DOJ website. I don't know if anybody has that link handy to put into the chat, but it is oag.ca.gov/AB3121 will get you to the website. From there, you can pull up the agenda. The agenda has a link embedded right in there to join the meeting. You just click on that and you can join as a guest from your desktop. If you're interested in making a comment, go ahead and raise your hand once you get in the queue to be called. And that's that process. If you're going to be joining from your phone, you will need to download the Blue Jeans app in order to make a comment. Okay. And we've got the agenda today. Again, it is eligibility is on the agenda to be discussed today, March 29th. Again, public comments start at 8:35 to 10:05. Then they're going to be going through some action items, some community engagement information, some updates from the Department of Justice, DOJ. We'll be breaking for an early lunch at 11:15 to 11:45. Then we will be back for part 2, and that's when we get into the eligibility discussion. And as you can see, we have a list of expert testimony lined up. Dr. Evelyn McDowell, Dr. Antoinette Harrell, really looking forward to that. Expert genealogist out of Louisiana. Dr. Hollis Gentry, Kelly Farish, Tony Burrows, Robin Simple, is that?
Yeah, it looks like simple.
Okay. Gregory Carr, Jessica Ann Mitchell, Owarer, Marcus Champion. Hey, that's the fam.
In the
And
building.
Mike Davis. All right.
Yeah.
Anything you want to add to that?
Not really. I think that in terms of, the community of eligibility, we know what the task force needs to do. And it should definitely be for the U.S. people who descend from U.S. child slavery. Should be pretty simple. However, I am interested in some of the witness testimony that's gonna happen. Obviously, we know Dr. Antoinette Harrell, who's actually been on our program and was actually on Politics in Black.
Just this past Sunday, she was on Politics in Black.
Yeah, so she's going to bring the fire, and definitely going to let the task force know, actually, how easy it can be to find your lineage. So
right, as long as you have the proper tools and someone to guide you, it's not that difficult. So, like you said, it should be cut and dry. Yeah, interested in seeing all the meeting proceedings today.
Yeah. So it's about 8:29. I know we're gonna have some fire comments. I know the community has been getting ready for this. So well, it looks like we got Chris in the building real quick. We'll let him join real quick. I know he wants to add something. We got about 1 minute, brother. So what's going on?
What up? Yo. I'm just here to say I love y'all. This is going to be fire. Get in the meeting right now. Get in the queue for the comments right now. It's on. Get in the comments. Get in the queue to make public comment right now. I love y'all. This is going to be amazing. The ancestors is here. We here. I ain't got nothing else to say.
All right. Well, we'll see you with those blue wrenches, modding the chats today.
Modifying, all that.
All right. Well, see you on the other side, brother.
One love.
All right, bro. Peace.
All right. Well, I think we've said it all. So, I mean, doesn't look like the meeting has quite started yet, but it should be starting soon. So we will go ahead and get that up so we can enjoy the hearing and, establish our eligibility, lineage-based reparations in California.
Yeah, get your popcorn, your fists, and your hand clasps ready to go, family.
Let's get to it.
All right. See you on the other side.
Good morning. Today is Tuesday, March 29th, 2022, and the time is 8:50 a.m. The AB 3121 Task Force meeting is now called to order. Good morning. My name is Camila Moore, and I'm the chairperson of the task force. Before we begin, let's have the staff do a roll call for attendance and establish whether Parliament.
Yes, good morning. I'll begin with the roll call. Chair Moore.
Present.
Vice Chair Brown. Member Bradford.
Here.
Member Grills.
Present.
Member Holder.
Present.
Member Jones Sawyer. Member Lewis.
Present.
Excuse me. Member Tamaki.
Here.
Member Montgomery Stepp.
Here.
Madam Chair, there are 9 members on the task force. 5 members are required to reach a quorum. There are 7 members present. A quorum has been established.
Task force hearing is now called into order officially. Thank you, members of the task force and members of the public, for coming to our March 29th, 30th hearings. From the review of the agenda, you'll see that it is a full agenda and we are already behind schedule. So we are going to go promptly to the public comment period. Ms. Aisha Martin-Walton, you may begin the public period. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Moore, task force members, and members of the public. My name is Aisha Martin-Walton, and I am with the Department of Justice. The task force would like to hear your public comments. The public comment period will be for an hour and a half. Each person will have 3 minutes. Please be advised that in fairness to everyone, at the 3-minute mark, you may be politely interrupted and your microphone turned off. However, please just know that there's a public comment period during each meeting. There will be a public comment period tomorrow, and the task force encourages everyone to participate. You may also submit written comments to the task force members at any time via email at reparationstaskforce@doj.ca.gov. To participate in public comment, use the raise hand function. Locate the button on the upper right-hand side of the screen. On the sidebar, you'll see the shape of a hand. Click on the hand to prompt the raised hand feature. On our end, we will accept your raised hand. Then you will see a notification at the top of your screen to continue. You have to click continue. You will then be elevated into the meeting as a presenter and automatically muted until it is your turn to speak. Please note that there's a 20-second delay between the attendee and presenter mode, so please keep that in mind as you are being promoted. And today we are using video only because we are having some technical difficulty with the camera. At the conclusion of your comments or at the 3-minute mark, you will be muted again and return back to the attendee level. And we will accept the raise hand function feature as they come in. And Ms. Trini Hurtado will introduce you. She is also with DOJ. So with that, Trini, let's have our first speaker of the morning.
It's not allowing me the blue jeans. Who else is a moderator on here? Noelle, please, can you see if you can promote? I'm clicking on them and nothing's happening. I do apologize. We've had lots of technical difficulties this morning.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
This is Chantal Chitachi Afia Bacon. Can I go?
Yes.
Thank
I
you.
was born I was born and raised in Southern California. My maternal and paternal grandparents are the reason I am in California. They left the Jim Crow terrorist environment of Arkansas and Alabama in the early 1950s to build a life in California. My lineage can be traced to 1790s Carolinas in the 1804 to what is now present day Alabama. My family was instrumental in the economic and physical infrastructure of these United States of America. No doubt my family looked forward to what their life would be to survive a horrific experience. I had family who lived through this war and probably heard of Frederick Douglass and were moved to fight for the Union. One of my ancestors would get bold and stand up, but get killed by his enslaver. I am a foundational Black American. I am a descendant of American chattel slavery. I know my lineage. I believe cruelty, the unbelievable cruelty and hardship my family suffered and managed to survive long enough that I could exist today is why I support lineage-based reparations. I do not support race-based reparations. I do not support immigration-based reparations. Immigrants from Africa, Caribbean, South America, or parts of Asia who share a Black skin tone that in proximity to Black Americans does not make them us, which is foundational Black Americans, U.S. descendant of chattel slavery, U.S. freedmen. And the discrimination they may experience is because we as Black Americans have not been rightfully repaired, but instead chose as a bottom to the American caste system. Black Americans who share African descent with those who were active participants in the slave trade makes us no more family to those Europeans who participate in our enslavement. Yes, I am, like many others, amalgamation of mixed blood because of forced migration of my enslaved ancestors, the rape of my enslaved ancestors, the breeding of my enslaved ancestors. Yes, we are a new people and we demand what is owed. No other is owed or even deserve what our ancestors toil for just because they are African descent. Vote yes for lineage-based eligibility. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments this morning. Rini, our next speaker.
Okay, Aisha, I can't see anyone. Can you see if you can see them on the presenter side? Noelle tells me that 2 people were promoted and I cannot see them.
Let's see. Let's go with Rashawn Phillip Stories.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We're not using video today.
No, we're having technical difficulties with the video.
Okay, great. Well, good morning, task force members. Good morning, all. My name is Rashawn, and I'm a poet. I'm a writer. I love language, and I want justice in my lifetime. I'm 39 years old. My wife and I consider ourselves to be pure reparationists, which in our house means reparations is religion. Currently, we live in San Francisco. I grew up in the city where my father raised me as a single dad. Mom passed away. My father was a mailman for 34 years after serving in the United States Air Force. My wife, Katira, is originally from LA. However, today it is my honor and my privilege to share with you all a poem. This poem is dedicated to the American freedmen, Dr. William Sandy Darity, A. Kirsten Mullen, and reparationists everywhere. Blood equity, birthright, and our reparations fight. Blood equity. We cannot choose our family, its relations, nor emancipate our blood-bound lineage of descent. This is us, American, descendant of slaves, the rattling chains, a phantom limb like dead weight, drowned bones. We are. And sunk costs can't swim. Not like this. I can't swim. It's a miracle I can sing under these conditions. If a people falls like a tree in a forest, and no one is around who will admit the truth, does it make a sound? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Soares, for your comment this morning and your poem. Trini, next speaker.
Okay, thank you. I'm back in business. Chantel Brown. You've been unmuted. You now have 3 minutes to speak. Chantel Bacon, I'm sorry. Ms. Bacon, you have 3 minutes.
So people can use video if they want. Not everyone is going to be experiencing the same technical difficulties. So if the video works for people, they can use it if they want.
Okay, that's a good idea. Yeah. Have them check.
Can you hear me? I went already, so.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Chantel Chachafia Bacon, I went already.
Okay, thank you so much.
Uh-huh.
Okay, the next speaker will be Rashawn Phillip.
This is Angela Nirvana. Rashawn just went.
Rashawn just went. Trini, you were signing.
Rashawn just went.
Thank
I
you.
do apologize. I had to readjust my computer and I'm back on. So we will go with.
Nirvana was
this
just.
Is Angela Nirvana. I'd like to speak.
Go ahead, Ms. Nirvana.
Thank you. I've shared with you in the past that the 2016 Color of Wealth LA report shows the median value of African Blacks' liquidity was $60,000 compared to US Black $200. In that same report, the median value of their total assets is $152K, US Black $30K, whites $350K, Asian Indian $460K, and Japanese $595K. And it wasn't because we weren't educated. In this same report, US Blacks were 44% degree with a median income of $53,500. African Black, 58.9% degree, median income $115,000. And although Mexicans were 17.8% degree, their median income was within $3,500 of US Black at $50K. Today, our median income in LA is $35K and the median home price is $834,400. This was 8 years ago, pre-pandemic. Just imagine how much more egregious the racial wealth gap is for freedmen whose ancestors built the wealth all of these groups eat from with their lives. The data is clear. Our never-ending Holocaust has been weaponized against us to enrich whites and immigrants with never-ending policies by our government at every branch, which your freedmen are the permanent bottom caste, which begs the question, how many more freedmen have to be legislated out of California before seeing a dime of whatever becomes of this study? Chemerinsky made it clear that it's time to untether Black immigrants from our reparative justice claim, because if you attempt to enrich them some more with our reparations, it will be race-based, not lineage. And how's that working for freedmen farmers who are at risk of being foreclosed on because whites and Latinos have filed a class action lawsuit on the grounds of reverse discrimination after $4 billion was set aside for their debt relief, which includes immigrants, our albatross. In effect, Narcan and Cobra, you are setting freedmen up to fail at ever receiving reparations at the state and federal level when you insist to be for all Blacks when freedmen are the Black immigrants' reparations per the data. You're seeking a white wealth transfer, which keeps us tethered to the bottom as the anchor of this country's capitalism, knowing full well we weren't entitled to CARICOM nor any repair from African colonizers. Even greater than Chemerinsky's testimony is Secretary of State Dr. Shirley Weber's definitive intent on eligibility of the AB 3121 bill she authored, that it is specifically for freedmen, Black American descendants of U.S. chattel slavery, lest we end up with 50 cents. The fact that this is even still open for debate is yet another assault of exponential proportion on freedmen. In closing, esteemed task force, in the words of Spike Lee, freedmen need you to do the right thing. I'll land there.
Thank you, Ms. Nirvana, for your comments this morning. Trini, our next speaker.
Next speaker is Friday Jones.
Good morning. The National Assembly of American Slavery Descendants, NASD, is committed to the educating and training of freedmen, the Black American descendants of U.S. chattel slavery nationwide, on civic engagement. By teaching an array of sciences, we ensure that the members can self-advocate at all levels of government. Our mission guarantees the future of freedmen children, preserving our historical lineage and culture for the next 7 generations to come, and advancing principles to heal America and preserve democracy for all. Institute of the Black World 21st Century was awarded 2 grants totaling $3 million as fiscal sponsors for both NARC and NCOBRA by the MacArthur Foundation. $1.5 million in support of NARC's general operations and $1.5 million in support of NCOBRA's non-lobbying activities to support reparations for people of African descent in the United States and the global Black diaspora. An olive branch extended to NARC by NASD LA resulted in Baba Gregory Akili ending the conversation by stating, "Back in the day, positions like yours would get you killed," to the 3 female co-chairs. The olive branch extended to NCOBRA resulted in gatekeeping access to dialogue with Sheila Jackson Lee and NASD's national arm being told to test our work in California. Just because something is written doesn't mean it will be enforced, and they stated they saw no value in meeting with us. Dr. Grills is a NARC commissioner, and it is apparent that NCOBRA and NARC have a Pan-African global Africa agenda to manifest what Sir Hilary Beckles called an intellectual theory. The leaders of these organizations have rejected the self-advocacy of CJEC and NASD as the heirs of our ancestors' legacy. And now the same organizations that had little influence on the specificity language in AB 3121 and the passing of this legislation are being given prime time as experts to silence the voices of the descendants, like Callie House was silenced by Congress, and like the Freedmen's Bureau was vetoed by President Johnson while he deferred to enlightened public judgment. After 30 and 40 years in this space, where is the work product from the legacy organizations proving the descendant community supports the intellectual theory of a global Africa? We will not dishonor our ancestors and subordinate our reparations claim in California or the United States in an effort to appease foreign heads of state when the people from Skid Row to the rural South live in abject poverty. The California DOJ has a fiduciary responsibility to the people of California and to serve as legal counsel to this body. It would be obscene for this DOJ to not advise this commission on the beneficiary class, particularly if complicit silence means the people foot the bill. I'm unapologetic in support for lineage-based repair. I am Friday Jones, co-facilitator of the National Assembly of American Slavery Descendants and a founding member of CJEC. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Friday Jones. All right, Trini, next speaker, please.
Our next speaker is Joe P. Joe P., you have 3 minutes.
Hi, good morning. I am an ally of the descendants of persons enslaved in the United States, also known as American freemen. I stand united with this community. I strongly urge the task force to vote for lineage-based reparations as intended by the author, as well as being recommended by the best legal and constitutional experts. I also strongly urge the task force to reject race and harm-based peers eligibility. Race-based legislation would be considered illegal both at the state and federal level, and harm-based lineage would be open to all races throughout the world, actually. The language of AB 3121 is clear. The legislative
Mr. Joe P., are you there?
Joe P., are you there?
Oh. Trini, perhaps you can come back to him. Maybe he will stay on.
My only other person that I have that was promoted is Akili. Has that person spoken already?
No.
Akili? Can you hear us, Akili?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. Please begin. You have 3 minutes to speak.
Yes, my name's Akili, and I'm the director of the Fannie Lou Hamer Institute, a core team member with Black Lives Matter LA, the steering committee member with the Black Community Clergy and Labor Alliance, and third vice president of the NAACP. And let me start out by saying that whoever that was that quoted me was lying. Nobody who knows me knows that I use my first name, and I don't use my full first name. So whoever that was that quoted me was lying, a unabashed liar. I never made those comments. I never made that statement. And whoever said that is a liar. I'm calling because I support an inclusive and comprehensive approach to reparations. To focus on lineage is difficult. According to Ms. Annette Harrow, a genealogist who was quoted in the Los Angeles Times yesterday, it would be difficult and divisive. The hurt, harm, and damage that was done through the Holocaust of enslavement and American apartheid has left long-lasting impacts on African Americans and Black people here. Many of the periods many of us came to California from other states that enslaved states escaping enslavement, convict labor, and sharecropping. Black people have been purposely, deliberately, and methodically excluded from the benefits of this country. We need to take the same approach to include us. Let us not take a narrow and divisive approach. Let us start with an all Black people and then prioritize. We have descendants right here in California from Allensworth. What if they can't prove their lineage? What do we do about them? I think that we need to start with all Black people who have been harmed by America, in America, to be repaired by and in America. It's a understandable approach. And more importantly, I don't want to get into very narrowly defined approaches. We have seen what that narrow approach has done in our community. We have seen the impact of some of us versus the rest of us. Rather than take that very narrow and unsustainable approach, let's start with all of us and then prioritize, move to how we can accommodate, support, and include all of us, because all of us have been harmed in one way or another, either by the Holocaust of enslavement, as I mentioned before, or American apartheid. And so I would urge this committee to start with all and then prioritize, move to the broader, and then look at how we include versus exclude. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Akili. Trini or Noel, our next speaker, please.
Tamisha Muhammad. Can you hear me? You've been unmuted. You now have 3 minutes.
Okay. Good morning. My name is Tamisha Muhammad. I am a stay-at-home mother. Black Americans are an ethnic group, a unique amalgamation of white settlers, indigenous peoples, native tribes, and enslaved people brought to this land via the transatlantic slave trade. A people that were bred for maximum literally built the infrastructure and industry in this country. A people that were traded as currency, a people who innovated modern medicine, especially the field of gynecology, by sacrificing our bodies. A people that stood on the front lines on battlefields in this country to free themselves from chattel slavery. A people that adapted to new forms of tyranny over several decades after slavery ended. All of these things make the case for Black American reparations by including any other group whose family did not bear the cost and the totality of these experiences. It's theft, legacy, and inheritance. It will be met with imperative consequences. Please vote yes for lineage-only reparations. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Muhammad, for your comments this morning. Trini, our next speaker, please.
Our next speaker is April. April, you've been unmuted. You now have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you. So I'm April. My roots originate from North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Virginia. I am not here representing an organization. I am here representing the people. My ancestors have fought in every single war. The matriarch of my families have a lineage of teachers and healers. My blood, my bone, my skin is in the soil of this land. We literally built it. Reparations, right, it is for repair harm to a specific group of people. So it's quite insulting, right, when Lisa Holder, who is a civil rights lawyer, right, comes and gives emotionalism and adds it. You know, my 2 children as well died at birth and CHOP, right, and they butchered me, and I had to receive cesareans for the duration of birth, all 6 of my children. That has nothing to do with reparations. It was insulting, and it was disgusting, and it's really unethical. I can't believe that it was done, but it's another example of people trying to shoehorn themselves into something that just is not even repair for them, right? It is literally for Black American descendants of chattel slavery, U.S. freedmen, foundational Black Americans. I'm lost as how someone so bright could be so confused as to race over lineage, right? We have Cheryl Grills, who is in mental health, right? How do you know what we have been through, right? And how are we confused on who should receive this repair, right? It is for repair for a specific and I'm going to relax just a little bit because I'm getting emotional, right? But for the people, right, it should be a lineage-based repair. No one else went through hundreds of years. No one else did. In fact, it was a plan. You planned, you packed up, and you flew here, right? No, it's crazy. It's insanity. And it's another way that Narcan and Cobra, who has for years, decades, have been doing this, have been causing problems, have been putting splinters into an already broken people with no solutions. They are literally working against us. They just make public statement about it. It's crazy that we are here. It is insulting to determine eligibility. Like, all of it is insulting, and you are participating. If you do not choose lineage-based repair, you are participating in continuing to silence the voices of my ancestors, that some are buried under the White House, right?
Miss April, Thank you
Yes.
so much for your comments. I apologize for having to interrupt you in the middle of your sentence today. Thank you so much. All right, Trini, our next speaker.
Next speaker will be
My name is Nita Watson, and I am a proud descendant of persons enslaved in the United States. My late mother, a direct descendant of African freedmen, was born in Malvern, Arkansas, which is about 60 miles north of Little Rock. My 83-year-old aunt, who is still living, tells us stories of their father, who was a builder, packing up an ice box he built, hitching it to his truck, filling it with food, yellow meat, watermelon, and beverages, and taking them down to the river to celebrate Juneteenth every year. She told me how her father was also a farmer and struggled to take care of his family and the racism they experienced as children growing up in the Deep South. Then she told me of the time they discovered documents at the Santa Monica Genealogy Library that revealed that our family landed in America on a slave ship. Today, I came forth to show solidarity and speak boldly as I stand unified with other descendants of American slavery and our allies. It is crucial that this task force cast their vote for lineage-based reparations for the Black American descendants of chattel slaves. The criteria for eligibility without misperception was made clear by its lead author, California Secretary of State, Dr. Shirley Weber. Dr. Weber shared how her family, too, is from Arkansas and were sharecroppers. AB 3121 is highly recommended and endorsed by some of our most respected legal, economic, and constitutional experts, and has overwhelming support by the public who have presented testimony at some point in these hearings. I strongly implore this task force to reject any race-based tiers of eligibility proposals. I strongly implore this task force to reject harm-based tiers eligibility proposals. As we all know, race-based legislation is unlawful as well as unconstitutional federally and in the state of California. Any harm-based lineage neutral legislation would unfairly open our reparations justice claim to anyone of any nationality. Please vote for lineage-based eligibility today and reject any race or harm-based tiers eligibility. The language in AB 3121 is straightforward and its author's legislative resolve is sensible. The legal and economic expert advice is feasible. The public commentary is logical. Please vote for lineage and not tiers. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Watson, for your comments this morning. Trini, our next speaker.
Our next speaker is Akinyele Umoja. You've been unmuted. You now have 3 minutes.
Good morning. How are you? My name is Akinyele Umoja. I am a professor of Africana Studies at Georgia State University in Atlanta, Georgia. But I'm also born in California, raised in California, graduate of Compton High School as well as Cal State LA. And, you know, my mother still resides and owns property in Compton, California. So I'm honored to be able to speak to you this morning. I am a descendant of Africans who were enslaved in Virginia, Louisiana, Georgia. My father sharecropped in Mississippi and in Arkansas. And at the same time, I recognize that people of African descent have come here from the continent of Africa, have come here from the Caribbean, other parts of the Americas, and they've become part of our community. And so if we talk about institutional racism, which is a vestige of slavery, they face the same discrimination and oppression that we do, that my, descendants like me do. And so when the police stops us in South Central LA, they don't ask if, who my ancestors were. They kind of look at us and determine that. People live in the same residences and go to the same schools that we do. We marry each other. We form community. And so I think the committee and the task force needs to take a more sophisticated approach than some of the ones I'm hearing here. It takes that into account in terms of who our community is today and what type of harm have folks from those communities or those different lineages experience as becoming a part of our community here in the United States. And so I just want the committee to take note of that. It's much more sophisticated than people that I'm hearing right now. I understand their anger, and because I've been a victim myself. And again, as far as I know, except for the European, the slave owner blood that exists in me and in the indigenous blood, all my other ancestors were people who were enslaved here in this jurisdiction, I should say. So I just want the committee to take note of that, and good, be blessed in your endeavors. This is important work, historic work, and I salute you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Umoja, for your comments this morning.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Pilar Penn. You've been unmuted. You now have 3 minutes.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good morning. My name is Pilar Penn. I'm an attorney and educator, and I serve as a writer and researcher for the National Reparations Institute in Atlanta, where we advocate for complete reparations for our people. At the time I began studying our history in the Americas, I believed that I knew the scope, breadth, and depth of the various systems derived to oppress Black people. Now I understand that then I knew very little except what I had been led to believe. If we don't step back and allow ourselves time to delve deep into the hidden history of this country and the Americas of which we are a part, we miss an opportunity to put Humpty Dumpty back together again. What I mean is, a review of history reveals that who we are remains a mystery to many of us. Our identity is clouded over by centuries of name changes, migrations within the Americas, some by choice, some by chance, some by the pressure of circumstances. The problem with creating a lineage qualification to participate in any form of reparations is that historical evidence proves the harms have been visited upon all of our people who either were here or were brought here by force and amalgamated into one group. Free Blacks suffered, sometimes more than the enslaved, and after the end of the institution of slavery, if you were non-white, whether the label was Black, Negro, colored, mulatto, or Indian, your existence was insufferable under the thumb of oppression. To suggest that one can be made eligible to receive reparations according to proof of lineage of enslavement is to ignore all the repercussions of living in a society that hated your very existence. I agree in part with Dr. Evelyn McDowell that a place to begin is to draw a line at voluntary immigration that began around 1870 to eliminate rather than include those who had no part of the system as they were not present in the U.S. during that period of time. It would be impossible almost for anyone after that time to claim they have family relations to anyone in the U.S. unless they existed prior to 1865. While a race-neutral approach may be what's expected in court, it is impossible to ignore the purging of people and their ties to the land and the severing of tribal and family relations along with the traditions that held them together as being race-based. You must not ignore the fact that not all the enslaved were Africans. Some were kidnapped whites and the indigenous populations before them who were run off their land and given labels like Negro, mulatto, colored, Black, and finally the misnomer African American. Together with the intentional erasure or hiding of archaeological evidence of spiritual and linguistic ties, traditional ways of life on the land, in a word, the annihilation of all that made humans human, should give us all pause as we attempt to deconstruct an act that has continued for 530 years. Focusing on only who can claim, by benefit of documentation, to be included in a group that, by its very nature, must include all who were victimized to first create and build this country and then maintain the system of oppression, feeds right into the hands of those who wish to derail our efforts. The burden of proving who we are is upon our shoulders. We are not a monolith. We are and always have been a diverse people. That fact must not be ignored. The National Reparations Institute stands at the ready to assist this task force in any way possible. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Penn, for your comments this morning. All right, Trini, our next speaker, please.
Our next speaker is Dr. Brian Nichols. Dr. Nichols, you've been unmuted. You now have 3 minutes.
Good morning. I'm going to read a portion of a letter that I recently submitted to the task force. I attended the early mornings of the last 2 days of the task force's video conference. I was most taken by the passion and expressions of some of those who spoke during the hour of public comment. Many of those speakers made forceful arguments that eligibility for reparations should be given only to those who can clearly trace their family lineage to American enslavement. Part of the rationale for their heartfelt belief seemed to be that reparations given to those African Americans who could not trace their lineage to enslavement would dishonor the loss of life and treasure suffered by our ancestors. My own awakening to the necessity of reparations was grounded in my many years working in Los Angeles gang prevention and intervention programs. Not only was Los Angeles ground zero for a horribly destructive gang problem, but also, and not coincidentally, for a crack cocaine epidemic and what Michelle Alexander calls mass incarceration. These triple evils, which I consider to have roots in the legacy of slavery, Jim Crow, and redlining, decimated the Black community in Los Angeles. Barely a Black family in the city escaped the reach of this multi-pronged calamity. After many years trying to encourage individual empowerment against enormous multi-generational social forces, I finally landed on the notion that only an intervention at the socio-cultural macro level could contend with the powers that oppress so many of our people. I have come to understand reparations as the appropriately powerful and broad psychosocial public health intervention capable of accomplishing that goal. Therefore, as much as I seek a reparations program that helps address the past multi-generational losses, I also seek a program that is forward-looking in that it dramatically reduces the risk that future shape-shifted versions of enslavement appear on the scene to further the aims of the ideology of white supremacy and its correlate, the myth of Black inferiority. Consequently, my focus is on the 5th UN guideline on the issuance of reparations to historical victims of gross human rights violations, guarantees of non-repetition. Should California make reparation eligibility strictly on the basis of lineage, in keeping with the guarantee of non-repetition, I believe that it is very likely to promote non-repetition of de jure slavery. But what about the de facto progeny of slavery? Jim Crow, redlining, mass incarceration, voter suppression. The apology offered for enslavement lineage suggests no accountability for these other scourges of Black life in America and, consequently, a freedom to repeat. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Nichols, for your comments this morning. Trini, our next speaker.
Our next speaker is Arthur Ward. Arthur Ward, you've been unmuted. You now have 3 minutes.
All right, thank you. I'm Arthur Ward. I'm a resident of Chicago, Illinois, but I have a lot of family in California who are interested in this, so I'm going to speak for them. So good morning. I'll make this quick. I get tired of others, including our Black elected representatives, always pushing hard to make the descendants of American slaves the muse for all other groups, including Black immigrants. This is ridiculous. My lineage does all the work, absorbs all the pain, suffers through all the deprivation, but when it comes to some kind of justice, some kind of recompense, we are supposed to step to the back of the line and allow Caribbeans and Africans to be prioritized. Taking this long to decide on something that should not even be a question in the first place is an insult. Now that I see how Pan-Africanism works, I am against Pan-Africanism. If a correction is for the descendants of American slaves, Why does it always have to be inclusive? Correction is too good for just Native Black Americans, even though the slavery and abuse and reconstructional failure was exclusively targeted to us, not targeted to Black folks that just landed here voluntarily after the smoke cleared. Tired of this. Got to include Eskimos, Martians, bluebirds, and any African that just flew in yesterday that got his feelings hurt by a random policeman. Really? And he then somehow deserves slavery reparations here? No, he doesn't. Anyone that thinks that he does is wrong. Everyone on this panel understands that a race-based bill at this point is morally, legally, and constitutionally improper. If this were a Jewish American issue, there would be no question as to eligibility. There would not be this level of open disrespect. Everyone would respect the legalities and sensitivities involved. Everybody on this panel would stay on subject. As a special and designated group of people that built this country, we exclusively deserve that special respect, and we should not have to demand this. This time, I hope that this panel will stay on subject, do the proper thing, and vote in favor of lineage-based reparations. And Narcan and Cobra, the people are not having your over-scholarized nonsense. Thank you. I'm landing here, and you have a good day.
Thank you, Mr. Ward. For your Trini?
The next speaker is Barbara Oakes. Barbara Oakes, you've been unmuted. You now have 3 minutes.
Hi, good morning. Can you all hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
California oftentimes is the benchmark for national change. It is pertinent to get this right. America's greatest sin, a stain on American history. Those are the phrases used to describe the atrocity of American chattel slavery. Reparations is the chance to right a specific and unique injustice. As such, descendants of those enslaved are the only ones with the rightful claim to stand in place of their ancestors. Anything else would be insulting. Insulting to the history of this flawed nation, insulting to the humanity of those whose forced labor built this nation. 400 years, 4 centuries of sweat, blood, turmoil, and torture. They did not seek the land of milk and honey. No, they created the land of milk and honey. This task force must not allow tethers to shoehorn their way into this most historic claim. Lineage-based reparations is the only way to begin repaying the generation after generation after generation of institutionalized theft. Proper redress must not allow those who voluntarily set foot on this land to scream, "Me too," over the backs of a kidnapped and enslaved people. Righting the wrong of America's greatest shame can only be done through the descendants of those painfully wronged. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Oakes. Trini, do we have
Our
another?
next speaker is James Matthews. Mr. Matthews, you've been unmuted. You now have 3 minutes. James Matthews. Okay, we'll come back to Mr. Matthews. The next speaker will be Ray Winbush. Mr. Winbush, you've been unmuted. You now have 3 minutes.
Morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
My name is Dr. Ray Winbush. I am director of the Institute for Urban Research at Morgan State University in Baltimore, Maryland. It is not surprising that the issue of eligibility has emerged in the California Task Force on Reparations, since certain groups have been aggressive in ringing the phones, flooding the emails, and pounding the doors of commissioners about the non-eligibility of African people in the diaspora. These groups are backed by conservative, right-wing, anti-immigration groups that are opposed to any immigrant receiving any reparations for the transatlantic slave trade. Just yesterday, I testified before the Boston City Council, and this poisonous and uninformed philosophy was offered as a justification for excluding non-American Africans born in the Caribbean and South America. The global reparations struggle has always been international, with various Africans cooperating from different countries. I have been a part of these meetings on reparations in Scotland, Barbados, England, and South Africa. And what all these groups have in common is the goal of obtaining reparations for the descendants of those enslaved during the transatlantic slave trade. The answer to the question, should reparations be only for descendants of people enslaved in the United States, or should reparations be extended to any Black person in the state, should be the latter group. All Black people in California should receive reparations, since they were judged by the color of their skin rather than what passport or nationality they had. The women that were sterilized by this state because they were Black, the land that was taken illegally by the state because the owners were Black, were never asked what country they were from. Indeed, 95% of those Africans in the Western Hemisphere, from Brazil to Brooklyn and from Curacao to California, have enslaved people in their family's history. I urge the task force to not only grant reparations to all Black people living in the state of California, but to do an investigation of those groups opposing this and the financial backers of them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Winbush. Trini, our next speaker.
Our next speaker is TAC. You've been unmuted. You now have 3 minutes.
Hello, panel. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Great. Good morning, Task Force panel. My name is Dr. Tish Crawford, and I'm a member of California Black Lineage Society. I'm a proud descendant of an unknown name of a person enslaved in the U.S. and also an American freeman. I stand united with my community of descendants of eligibility intended by the author of AB 3121, Secretary of State Shirley Weber, as well as recommended by the best legal and constitutional experts. To not do so is a vote to erase our ancestors and to re-traumatize our descendants again. I strongly urge the task force to reject any race or harm-based eligibility proposal. Race-based legislation is illegal and unconstitutional in California. And once again, you're re-traumatizing our ancestors, which is not okay. Any harm lineage neutral legislation would open reparations to anyone and any race, and once again, to erase the descendants of the enslaved persons who died in that killing field. Reject race or harm-based tier eligibility. The language in AB 3121 is clear. The legislation intent is clear. The legal advice is clear. And most of all, the public is clear. Vote for lineage, no tiers. We will not be erased, and stop the re-traumatization of our descendants. And I'm going to reach out to someone on that task force who knows and feels what it's like to be named and unknown. And they are buried in Evergreen Cemetery. Evergreen Cemetery is where my ancestors are buried, and some of them have no names and dates of birth. And it's also a place where Japanese Americans are buried also too. And they were buried there because guess what? They could not be buried in any other type of cemetery. I am California born. I am a descendant of an unknown person, an unknown slave who died in that killing field that moved forward and gave my family birth. They gave birth to a doctor. They gave birth to a police captain. They gave birth to an academic, quote unquote, teacher. This is really and truly deep in my heart, to the point where, yes, we created the California Black Lineage Society because those ancestors are important to us.
Dr. Crawford? Dr. Crawford, I'm so sorry to interrupt you in the middle of your sentence this morning. Thank you for your comment.
Thank you very much, panel. Please do the right thing. Lineage-based.
Next speaker, please. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Cheryl Cobb. Cheryl Cobb, you've been unmuted. You now have 3 minutes to speak.
Hello, can everyone hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, my name is Crystal Cobb, actually.
I'm sorry.
Oh, no, no problem. It happens all the time. I would just like the task force to know that I am a descendant of U.S. chattel slavery living in Sacramento. My parents came from Mississippi and Tulsa. My father served in the U.S. Air Force and my brother served in the Navy. I just wanted to quote from The Color of Money by Mirza Baradaran, chapter 1, page 10. Slavery, America's original sin, according to James Madison, created the foundation of modern American capitalism. It was slavery and the blood drawn with the lash that opened the arteries of capital and commerce that led to U.S. economic dominance worldwide. The effects of the institution of slavery on American commerce was monumental. 3.2 million slaves were worth $1.3 billion in market value, almost equal to the entire gross national product. Slaves are also a valuable store of capital because they were liquid assets that could be exchanged on markets more easily than other forms of property. Slavery's unparalleled bounty is what caused many Americans to tolerate such a barbarous institution. Growing international demand for cotton fueled the growth of slavery, and the legal and political arms of the state maintained and protected it. More cotton led to more profits, which led to more demand for slaves, which led to more legislation supporting slavery, and then even crueler methods of oppression to extract more work from slaves. We're all aware of this information. The point is that a specific debt is owed to a specific group of people whose ancestors were brought here in chains and were used as unpaid labor, among many other heinous acts. And those are those of us who descend from U.S. chattel slavery. I am asking the task force to adhere to the intent of Dr. Shirley Weber's language in AB 3121 in that reparations are for descendants of U.S. chattel slavery, and to also follow the advice of Erwin Chemerinsky, who made it clear that a reparations claim should be race neutral and lineage-based to hold up in our California courts and not be ultimately struck down by the U.S. Supreme Court. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your comments. Trini, our next speaker.
Our next speaker is Michael Hicks. Mr. Hicks, you've been unmuted. You now have 3 minutes.
Hey, can everyone hear me clearly?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Good morning. My name is Michael Hicks. I am a co-founder and board member of the NCCFR, that is the National Coalition of Churches for Reparations. I am a proud descendant of persons enslaved in the United States, also known as the American freedmen. My lineage goes from my mother's side of the family, Limestone County, Alabama. On my father's side of the family, my lineage extends to Hinds County, Mississippi. I stand united with my community of descendants, and I strongly urge this task force to vote for the lineage-based reparations eligibility intended by the author of AB 3121, Secretary Shirley Weber, as well as recommended by our best legal and constitutional experts. With listening to all the testimony this morning, one thing that we have to keep in mind, I want to push back on the concept that the opinions of the people are not sophisticated, quote unquote. I would say they are quite sophisticated because these are people that understand that they have been the burden bearers of generational poverty and being permanently placed as a bottom caste. I strongly urge this task force to reject any race or harm-based Tues eligibility proposals. Race-based legislation is illegal and unconstitutional in Florida and federally. For any harm-based, lineage-neutral legislation, it opens up reparations to anyone of any race, and it allows the opportunity for our righteous demand for justice in this nation, the nation that our ancestors built, to be denied because of legal barriers, legal technicalities, and white supremacy. The language in AB 3121 is clear. The legislative intent is clear. The legal advice is clear. And the public has been clear for nearly a year. Vote for lineage, no tears, today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Hicks.
Aisha?
Yes.
We'll be going ahead with Jessica Needs.
Okay. Task force members, sign language interpreter. So in order for the commenter and the interpreter to see one another, we will have to temporarily mute your videos, if that's okay, but we'll turn them right back on. Okay. Trini, we are ready for Miss Needs and her interpreter.
Okay, I am unmuting Jessica Needs.
Can the panel see me, the interpreter? No. Okay.
No, we cannot. Trini, will you be temporarily?
Yes, I'm muting the task force members.
Okay, thank you. Give us just a moment.
Jessica, I do not see your camera.
I'm not able to see Jessica's camera either, or my own.
Okay.
Let me turn mine off as well. Trini, go ahead and put the interpreter on the camera.
Okay. She is on.
You can see me now.
No, Sydney, do you have on your end, there should be a settings button on the right hand side of your screen. It should look like a little cogwheel.
Oh, now we can see her.
Oh, now we
can see me
you.
now. Perfect.
Yes.
Okay.
And then Miss Jessica, if you can see a settings button on the right side of your camera, on the right side of your screen, it's a little like a cogwheel. If you click on that and then click on your camera. Can you ask her if she's using a Mac computer or a PC?
I can ask. I can't.
Oh,
Okay, now I can see her.
Now we're okay. Perfect.
Okay, we can see her now. Thank you. Okay. Then I want to apologize about that. Some technical issues there. I was trying to get it together with my camera. I have 3 minutes to speak, correct?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So I'm a deaf third generation family, and I'm from Colorado, and I was born in Wisconsin. My parents are from the Civil War era, and they fought through that era. Dad told me stories about my family for several generations back that were just so hard to believe. And I did some research on my own, starting around in the 2000s. And after that point, I kind of got lost until recently. I signed up with Ancestry, the Ancestry DNA program, to do a little more research on my lineage. And that supports all of the stories that my father was telling me about slavery, etc., in those eras. And the commerce was supposed to help arrest the Golden State Killers in California. So I did some research about that and how, and my studies found that my family at that time were connected with this. And at all these details I was just finding out with my research just supported everything that my dad was telling me. So I just want to quickly show you here on my phone. It says on Ancestry, here's what it is, where you can check your ethnicity, Ancestry DNA. And this is the map that it showed me here, and the percentage breakdowns of the various regions. And then it even has, it says communities here, early Virginia African Americans, and Carolinas, Maryland, Virginia. So those are where they trace back to, is what she's trying to show. So once I saw that, I wanted to really be able to vote and support lineage-based reparations. So I support that take of things. So it shouldn't be dependent on race, but more your family. And slavery, there was a family with the Grayson last name that we were tied to, and the wife's name is Shanty. And I feel that at that time, that family promised our family to be a part of their inheritance, but that was not received. And when we through over the years we were oppressed, and we were subject to racism and systemic racism throughout the years, and our children have experienced these same downfalls as well. So we have to have hope, and also we want to know that we have the DNA to prove it. We've got Jewish, Asian, Indian, all in my lineage as well, and also African Americans have that same way to trace back their lineage and see what they can do. But we were all here as Americans now, but it should be who is building a family to become rich. And those reparations would hopefully provide next steps for future generations. Thank you for having me speak. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Needs, and thank you, Ms. Sidney, for your powerful comments this morning. Thank you.
Same to you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, our next speaker is going to be Quanta. Quanta, you've been unmuted. You now have 3 minutes to speak. And task force members, you may turn your cameras back on.
Thank you. I just had a feeling in my gut after that. I knew my spirit told me it was me. I was next. So I'm going to speak. I'm going to speak clearly and boldly. Lineage-based only. I think that everyone is confused. Well, not everyone, a lot of people are confused between reparations, which is a debt owed, and a Black agenda. I think what Mrs. Grills and Holder and a few others are thinking more about is a Black agenda. We're with that. My lineage is so great that we're saying, yes, we need our debt owed. We need to be repaired. But also, too, we understand the diaspora that's here, and we want to have a Black agenda. But everybody's so hateful towards us that they're saying, no, we want the Black agenda, but we want what's owed to you as well. That's divisive. Man, that's divisive. Or divisive, however you want to say it. The disdain for freedmen is sick. You gotta watch the way you lay. You laying wrong. I'm at the headboard laying. Then when I look down, you at the footboard watching me. I gotta watch the way you lay, and the way you laying is wrong. I'm from Kansas City, Missouri. My lineage is here. I support you going with the CARICOM. I support that. We back you. But you're trying to shoehorn yourself into something that's old, a debt that's old. I come from a lineage that's owed something. And you guys are confused. So I'm trying to help you get on the right and right, as they say. This is a reparations that is specifically for a Pacific people. And the Black agenda that you're trying to push over reparations is uncool. And we're not going to allow it. Tamaki, you're not divisive, I know. Grills, I hope you're not divisive, I know. You're trying to push a Pan-Africanist mindset, which is okay, cool, fine. But let me be who I be. I'm freedman. Let me come up that table as a freedman. Quit telling me who you think I should be. It's not fair. You telling me that, hey, shoot, it's supposed to be the whole diaspora. And I say, okay, well, fine, I'll sit down at the table. Then you tell me, no, ma'am, you're going to sit over here. And also, too, you're not Negro. You're not freedman. You're African. And I said, no, madam, I'm not. No, I'm not. I have African ancestry, which I'm happy for. God bless. Heck yeah, we wear it proud. You know, African Americans, as we say, freedmen, we're that part of us proud. But we are not African. Yes, you are. No, madam, I'm Negro. This is who I am. Respect me. You're going to put some respect on me. Like my girl, Michelle Obama said, who is of the same lineage that we're talking about now. Respect us. Let us come to the table as who we are. Quit trying to push and force something that we're not. We should be able to sit down at this table as who we are.
Excuse me, Ms. Quanto, I'm so sorry to interrupt you. Thank you for your comments, though, this morning.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, our next speaker, please, Trini.
Next speaker will be Alexis. Alexis, you've been unmuted.
Yes, my name is Alexis, and I am a descendant of freedmen on both sides of my family. And I definitely support all of my brothers and sisters in the diaspora, but we have to remember that reparations, its intent from the beginning of Special Field Order 15 is specifically to the American freedmen. That debt has been unpaid as of yet, and then goes specifically to the descendants of American freedmen. Any other move on here is going to be difficult. It is easy to prove our lineage. And let's remember the intent of the bill is for the descendants of American freedmen. I implore you to vote specifically on lineage-based reparations. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexis. Next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Cam Howard. You've been unmuted. You now have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Task Force. Cam Howard within Cobra. It is my understanding that the question presented here on eligibility is one that wants to ensure that those people most injured by the racist anti-African crimes are ensured repair. One notion is that only Blacks who can prove enslavement ancestry in America should be eligible. We reject this position for several reasons. First, this would in fact have a limiting effect on those who actually are descendants of Africans enslaved in the United States. Most experts looking at this issue would agree that a large portion of this group would not be able to prove ancestry in a timely fashion, if at all, rendering them ineligible for repair. This would set category, but could not technically prove it. Secondly, we are the result of 400 years of crimes and atrocities committed against Blacks. It allows them to move to the front of the line above every Black person and pushes Blacks back, not because of a particular period of harm they came to the United States, but because they are white. These benefits, they must pay through their taxes, reparations also, we argue. Conversely, the same is true for every person of African ancestry and heritage. The minute they step foot on the
So I just want to say this is Eric Christian Ramses from the Freedmen Party. I'm a proud Freedmen Party member and a Freedman. I was born in San Diego, California, raised in Los Angeles. I live in San Francisco. I just want to say my dad was in the Marines and the Navy as well. I believe in lineage-based eligibility. If anybody is familiar with the 9/11 Victim Compensation Fund, the reparations given to the victims of 9/11, there was no race needed to define the victims of 9/11. It was a lineage-based reparations, just as all forms of reparations are lineage-based. Don Tamaki, for example, as a Japanese citizen, knows that not all Japanese people in the world or in America received reparations, for example. Kenneth Feinberg was the lead person on the 9/11 Victim Compensation Fund. That's going till 2090, to give you an idea, and it's all lineage-based. A few other things I'll say. For Lisa Holder, for the child that you lost, I feel for you, and you have a civil and criminal trial that you can take up, but that is not reparations for Freedmen. For the guy who mentioned the cop situation, you have a civil or criminal trial that you can take up, but that is not reparations. For Haitian Americans, they can take up their as well can take up theirs with UK. I know Javon
comes up to repair Black Americans from slavery, we always have to include everybody else. That's the number one tool that the white supremacists on the left use to avoid having to repair Black Americans. You look at affirmative action, same thing happened with affirmative action. They included all these other groups. Including all these other groups. That's the exact same thing they're trying to do with reparations now. And NARC and
Yes, ma'am. My name is Ajua Artist Ayatoro. I am a founding member of NCOBRA, National Coalition of Blacks for Reparations in America, and served as its founding co-chair and the chair of its legal Strategies Commission. I'm a member of the National Conference of Black Lawyers, NCBL. And in 1987, I was its national co-chair at the time NCBL became one of the 3 founding organizations of NCOBRA. I am a descendant of enslaved Africans. I am a legal expert that knows that it is constitutional to develop a reparations proposal or an reparation plan that is based on race and injury. That is the Japanese American Restitution Bill. I am pained by the separatist and chauvinistic views of those who seek to defocus reparations from full repair and push a narrow view that will not repair, but only provide money for the small group of those who can prove descendancy from enslaved Africans. I urge you to embrace a definition of eligibility for reparations that accurately reflects those of African descent that slavery and its legacy injured and continue to injure. Those injured include descendants of enslaved Africans and freed Africans and those of African descent who came to the United States after emancipation, who looked Black and who continue to be treated as less than whites because of the legacy of slavery, the anti-Blackness of which it was based and on which the continuing disadvantaging of African descendants Black people is based. I know you're receiving testimony on the continuing legacy of slavery in the criminal punishment system. As my friend and fellow reparationist Charles Ogletree said some years ago, it is an unbroken chain from slavery till now. I would add the links are different. African descendants, African Americans are no longer in the chains, but the operation of the punishment system that targets us for harsher punishments, including death, has not changed. There are also many scholarly studies that provide evidence that this pattern continues virtually in all major areas of life in the United States, including healthcare, employment, and education. Scholars such as Lewin Wang, healthcare, and Andrew Owoachi-Willig, employment, as well as many others, attest to the continuation of anti-Blackness that is the legacy of slavery, its direct descendant. Providing reparations only for those who can prove their descendancy from enslaved Africans is yet another win for white supremacy, as it dismisses and devalues the harms done to African descendants not enslaved, who were injured by slavery due to their Blackness and who are injured by the legacy of slavery due to that Blackness. Thank you very much for this opportunity. And we know that when you look at reparations, it's more than a check. It must be, if the injuries caused by slavery and can be changed, can be remembered. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comments this morning. Our next speaker, please. Rini.
Our next speaker is Michael Ingram. Mr. Ingram, you've been unmuted. You now have 3 minutes.
Can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Thank you and good morning. I'm a proud descendant of persons enslaved in the U.S., and I appreciate the opportunity to make comments today. I had a prepared script that I'd like to read from, but I also have a question based on some of the comments that I've heard earlier, and that has to do with people that might have come here after a certain period of time, namely, and particularly after the civil rights movement in the US, where we know before 1965, more than 99% of the individuals that might have been classified as Black were indigenous, we'll say, to this country. They had suffered through the slavery and Jim Crow and whatnot. My question, the sophisticated question that I'd like to pose based on that information is, why would anyone understanding the racist history of this country with dark skin come here? Because my understanding is that it would not be to participate in a struggle that had already well taken place. So if you know that this place is a racist place, why would you come here if you thought you had to participate in that racism as a victim? In any case, I'll continue to say that I was born almost 55 years ago as an American Negro in South Carolina. My great-grandfather, whom I knew, was a sharecropper and had to move around in the area where I was born, multiple times, taking his family of 9 with him because of some of the injustices that we're talking about compensating today. Specificity matters and lineage matters. Otherwise, you don't have reparations, you have a program. In any case, I'll continue with the statement that was prepared to say that I stand with my community of descendants and I strongly urge this task force to vote for lineage-based reparations eligibility intended by the author of AB 3121, Secretary Shirley Weber, as well as recommended by our best and legal constitutional experts. I also strongly urge this task force to reject any race or harms-based tiers eligibility proposals. Race-based legislation is illegal and unconstitutional in California and federally, and any harms-based lineage-neutral legislation would open reparations to anyone of any race. Vote for lineage-based eligibility today. Reject race or harms-based tiers eligibility. The language of AB 3121 is clear. The legislative intent is clear. The legal advice is clear, and the public has been clear for almost a year. Vote for lineage, no tiers today, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ingram, for commenting this morning.
Our next speaker is Karen Singleton. Ms. Singleton, you've been unmuted. You now have 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you. Good morning, panel. My name is Dr. Karen Singleton, and I'm a clinical psychologist with a trauma specialty calling from Cambridge, Massachusetts. We believe your actions in California will have a wide-reaching effect, and we will be listening closely to what you decide here in Cambridge and beyond. As a Black psychologist, I've seen Black women and men in groups and individual therapy for over 2 decades. I've seen clients who identify as gay and straight and non-binary, having few economic resources, being very financially comfortable, attending community colleges, elite colleges. And what I've seen with these students, adults, families, people who are born abroad, people who are born here, the common denominator I've observed is anti-Blackness. It's the common thread that I feel has been carefully crafted in this historical scarf that continues to choke the clients that I've seen, that continues to plague them and threaten them, and really be a threat to their safety and to mine, and holds its grip tightly and keeps them from flourishing and thriving and honestly just existing and living their life in a way that feels safe and whole. And as a therapist who's committed to my clients and their safety, I bear witness over and over again to their experiences of seeking health care and mental health care outside of my office, and being misdiagnosed and underdiagnosed and overdiagnosed, and assumptions that are made about them after people just looking at them in a glance, a quick glance that's often casual and hostile and dismissive and many things, but overly laden with assumptions about them just based on the way that they present. And in the midst of this mental health crisis that we all know about, that's coupled with anti-Blackness and this continued legacy of slavery and racism, that glance can have dire consequences. And these experiences, in my opinion, can lead to them and their families to understandably distance themselves from mental health care, which can often have dire consequences as well, and negative mental health consequences that I've seen all too close when I'm comforting families that have dealt with loss. So as someone in the healing profession who intimately understands this from a personal experience, from an academic experiences, from professional experiences, I really implore you to ensure that this harm doesn't continue and that it doesn't reoccur. So thank you for hearing me out today.
Thank you, Dr. Singleton. Karen Moore, we'd like to check in with you. It's 10:25 and we have technically time for 2 more speakers, but I believe there are a couple more. Trini, what do we have?
I have 4 speakers promoted, and I haven't promoted any more in the interest of time.
There more?
The 4 speakers.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. The next speaker will be Robert Kalin. Mr. Kalin, you've been unmuted. You now have 3 minutes.
Hello, can you hear?
Yes, sir.
All right. So I want to thank Camila Moore, Monica Montgomery Stepp, Jovan Scott Lewis, and Amos Brown for voting in line with the people and Assemblywoman Weber's original intent of the bill. I move to demand a special council meeting from the DOJ to inquire about the removal of Cheryl Grills and Lisa Holder. Since they can't uphold the original intent, they should be replaced with UCLA trained attorney Antonio Moore and another member who better represents the original intent. I want to end by announcing some reparations items that do not require disbursement based on skin color. CARICOM is a reparations package for those with lineage in the Caribbean. Black Americans aren't included based on Blackness or a slave experience. Al Jazeera reported in February of this year that Uganda was to pay reparations to the Congo, and Black Americans aren't included in that either. According to the London Daily, Burundi joined the Congo in calling for reparations from Belgium, which Black Americans didn't get included in. Obama also paid $12 million to Jewish Holocaust survivors, a tragedy that didn't even happen in America, but all people who experienced discrimination weren't included in that repair. Jamaica also has recently called for reparations from Britain as they rejected a visit from British royals, which does not include ADOS. It seems specific lineage repair is understood for other groups, but Black Americans are held hostage unless all Black people get access to their justice claim. This is racist and anti-Black American. I asked Senator Bradford, who doesn't seem to be here, and Don Tamaki to do what they should have done last month and not be influenced by the chaos agents on the task force who should be up for immediate removal. Please do not join the hateful and spiteful Grills and Holder in hijacking Black history and using it on behalf of NARC and INCOBRA or some other subsidiary organization who asked Jessica Ann Mitchell Iwuyar to speak even though she's hostile to grassroots organizers. Even when Harvard had to retract their lies, she persists. I asked Bradford and Tamaki to join Stepp, Lewis, Moore, and Brown in voting for lineage-based repair and the DOJ to investigate ways to remove Holder and Grill. Also, I asked the DOJ to work in concert with the task force to find a way to keep NARC and INCOBRA as far away from these proceedings as possible. Finally, I want to point your attention to a New York Times article called My Great-Grandfather, the Nigerian Slave Trader. As a Black Nigerian woman recounts her family history in slave trading. If you open the criteria, not only do you make it harder for the bill to pass, as per Dean Chemerinsky, but you could be offering those who benefited from slave trading a chance to also benefit from the repair. Where is the justice in that? I also want to point out how Dr. Umar Johnson, one of the leading Pan-Africanists, recently came out with a video saying that Black Americans are being replaced. So if he can see it, someone who has fought organizing groups
Mr.
such
Kalin,
as ADOS before,
I'm so sorry to cut you off,
why
Mr.
can't anyone
Kalin.
else?
Yeah, I'm so sorry. Thank you so much for your comments today and your time for showing up. Next speaker, please.
The next speaker is Jennifer Williams. Ms. Williams, you've been unmuted. You now have 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you. My name is Jennifer Williams. I'm a PwC Fellow in the CEO Action for Racial Equity Fellowship. However, my comments are my own and separate from both organizations. I live in LA County with my husband and our 3-year-old daughter. I must note that my husband is a Black Caribbean Canadian who is now a US citizen. In contrast to my husband, I was born and raised in California. My mother and father were also born and raised here, and both of their families on both sides migrated here from other parts of the country. My piecemeal ancestry research shows that I am a descendant of slaves on both sides of my ancestry. It was through this research that in January 2020, I discovered my blood relationship to Claude Neal, a man who was publicly lynched in Greenwood, Florida in 1934. Because of this relation, I am a member of the Legacy Coalition, which is a national organization seeking to secure reparative justice for American citizens whose ancestors were lynched in acts of racial terror during the Jim Crow era. It was the legacy of slavery and the Jim Crow South that brought many of the first Black California migrants to this great state. And it is in this great state that descendants of slaves continue to experience a different America apart from our Black immigrant brothers and sisters. According to a national 2019 Pew Research study, Black immigrants have a median income of $57,200, the majority making at least six figures. The Black US-born population only make a median income of $42,000. The majority earn less than $25,000. Almost 1/3 of the Black immigrant population have earned a bachelor's degree or higher, which is a 10% increase from 2000, and the highest increase among the entire immigrant population, as well as the entire US-born population. Finally, over half of Black immigrants live in a household headed by a married couple, while only 36% of the Black US-born population can say the same. Now, while most of the data I shared is not California specific, I trust that greater disparities exist in California alone because, according to the Sentencing Project, California is one of 7 states with a Black to white incarceration gap greater than 9-to-1. But because the majority of Black immigrants arrived in the US after the year 2000, most Black immigrants in California have been spared the trauma of mass incarceration and its impact. All of this data reveals a drastic difference in American experiences between descendants of slaves and Black immigrants, the cause being the difference of experiences between voluntarily immigrating here for economic opportunity and being kidnapped and brought here solely for the economic opportunity of others. It's not divisive, not exclusion. Even if race-based reparations were legal, it would not be commensurate with the facts. For this reason, I believe eligibility for reparations in connection to the legacy of slavery should include a lineage connection to slavery. And as a constituent in your district, respectfully, Senator Bradford, I ask you to support lineage reparations. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Our next speaker, and this will be our next to last speaker.
Yes, the next speaker is Annette Wilcox. Ms. Wilcox, you've been unmuted. You now have 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Annette Wilcox. I'm 65 years old from New York City. I've been a lifelong Democrat voter and know nothing about right-wing organizations and anti-immigrant organizations. I am the great-great-granddaughter of Archibald Mobley, Jr., who was born enslaved in 1825. I have an image of his Irwin County, Georgia voter registration form dated August 20th, 1876. I am also the granddaughter of Alexander Hamilton Blessed, who migrated to the United States from Jamaica in the early 1900s. I strongly support lineage-based reparations, as does my 95-year-old mother, Brunella Wilcox. Slave traders and racial theologians recognized no distinction in the peoples on the African continent. They disregarded local culture, lineage, and history among the millions of people, seeing them only as inferior beings to the white man and as a means to their economic enrichment. Let's not make the same mistake as the advocates of race-based reparations do and strip away the humanity of freedmen by making their history and culture a prop for everyone, quote unquote, African person in the world. This demeans the horrifying history of the freedmen who had their identity stolen, were enslaved for 250 odd years, and faced Jim Crow terror for another 100 years post-slavery. We often hear that Black Americans are not a monolith, and this is true. Although Black immigrants were enslaved in their home countries similarly to American freedmen, post-slavery, they lived in majority Black countries. Even though its racist system was well documented, Black immigrants still made the choice and had the resources to locate to the United States. The claim that Black American immigrants now deserve reparations is just as invalid as a 1980 Black American immigrant to South Africa claiming reparations now for the 200 years of apartheid experienced by township residents. Just as reparations to Native Americans has gone to specific tribes, and Japanese internment reparations did not include all Asian people in the United States, we must respect the individual humanity of people. There has not been a law, program, or set aside specifically to address the unique experience of freedmen since the Emancipation Proclamation in 1865. We have waited 157 years for our 40 acres and a mule. Please right this wrong and vote today for lineage-based eligibility as intended by the author of AB 3121, Dr. Shirley Weber. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wilcox. And our last speaker of the day, Trini.
Our last speaker of the day is Marjorie Melvin. Ms. Melvin, you've been unmuted. You now have 3 minutes to speak.
Good morning, task force. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. As stated, my name is Marjorie Melvin. I was born and raised in the state of California. I'm presently living in the state of California. I am a descendant of U.S. chattel slavery, both sides. Mom is from Louisiana, dad is from Texas, came to the state in 1960s. Parents experienced redlining, unable to buy property in the nicer areas due to redlining. We're told that despite working at Boeing and Rockwell, that they would have to live in South Los Angeles, which is where I was born and raised and lived. While there as a child, I witnessed things that no child should have to witness. Under the policies of former LA Police Chief Daryl Gates, I witnessed battering rams being run through properties in South Los Angeles. I saw children addicted to crack as a result of crack cocaine brought into communities. And then later on, as a professional, a Board of Parole member, I saw Black people over-incarcerated from Donovan State Prison in San Diego all the way up to Pelican Bay State Prison. And mostly non-Black people were able to benefit from the Black American bodies lingering in state prisons. I saw this on a regular basis as a member of the parole board. As an administrative judge with the Department of Social Services, I saw Black children lingering in foster care. The only way to remedy what has been assault against Black Americans is through lineage-based reparations. Shirley Weber, who expressed her intent, which was to create policies and proposals that address the history of discrimination against Black Americans and to address the racial wealth gap, said that lineage-based reparations was her intent. I'm speaking primarily to Joan Sawyer and Bradford. Your colleague used her political will and her social capital to push for reparations-based policies that would target and address our needs as Black Americans. I am asking you to support lineage-based reparations. Do what your colleague wanted. Follow her intent. You all have the power to do that. And I would close by saying, just thank you for letting me speak. Do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Melvin. Thank you all the speakers today. We've reached the allotted time for public comment. If you were not able to provide public comment, we invite you to join tomorrow morning. There will be another public comment session, and you can attend future meetings or submit written comments or testimony via email at reparationstaskforce@goj.ca.gov. And again, we apologize for the technical difficulty that we had this morning starting the hearing. Chair Moore, I'd like to turn it back over to you. Thank you, and thank you, Trini. Chair Moore, I think you're muted.
We just lost her, Aisha.
Okay, perhaps she's probably logging off and logging back on. Everyone, we will be with you momentarily to continue the hearing. Thank you.
Hi, sorry about that. Just facing some technical difficulties. So thank you again, Ms. Martin Walston, for facilitating the public comment period. So we will now move to the next item on the agenda, which is the of the February hearing minutes. So the minutes from the February task force meeting were sent to task force members with the materials, and we've had a chance to review them. Are there any questions, comments, or corrections regarding the minutes? Hearing no questions, comments, or concerns about the minutes, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the minutes as presented. Because I can't see everyone on the screen.
This is Cheryl Grills. I move that we approve the February 23rd and 24th meeting minutes.
Thank you. It has been properly moved. Thank you. It has been properly moved and seconded that the February task force hearing minutes are approved as presented. Is there any discussion on the matter? Hearing no discussion, I'll turn to Parliamentarian Johnson so that a roll call vote can be established on the motion. Parliamentarian Johnson.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Before I move, could you please tell me who seconded the motion?
I did.
Thank you.
Birthday.
I will now call the roll to establish the vote for the acceptance of the minutes as presented. Chair Moore. Chair Moore. Vice Chair Brown. Chair Moore, I see you. Can you nod your head, or either way? I can't hear you. Okay, thank you. Vice Chair Brown. Member Bradford. Member Bradford. Member Grills.
Aye.
Member Holder.
Aye.
Member Jones Sawyer. Member Lewis.
Aye.
Member Tamaki.
Aye.
Member Montgomery Stepp. Member Montgomery Stepp. Madam Chair, there were 5 members voting. And there were 5 members voting aye and 0 nays. Madam Chair, okay.
So thank you, Parliamentarian Johnson. So there are 5 members voting, 5 ayes and 0 nays. So the ayes have it and the motion carries. The minutes are approved as presented. So the next item on the agenda is Community Engagement Plan update from Member Grills. Before we go to that, I want to make sure that someone reached out to Dr. Brown so that he's able to be a part of this meeting. Has anyone heard back from him yet about whether he can hear and whether he can talk?
Chair Moore, we've tried to promote him. He's actually on the attendee side. We've tried to promote him, but he hasn't accepted the, he hasn't clicked the continue button to promote over. So someone may need to assist him with a presenter link.
Okay, I am going to send him a presenter link again. Can I just say, give me one moment, please?
Hello?
So I sent Dr. Brown the link directly, so he should be on shortly. We shouldn't proceed until we're able to get him on the call. One moment, I'm going to try to call him again. I was just saying, I apologize. Still trying to get Dr. Brown on. I'll try to troubleshoot in a minute, but I think he made clear on the phone that he's trying his hardest to get connected and he's not sure what's going on. So out of deference to him, particularly as a vice chair, I want to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to make sure that he's included in the discussion. Update as to their correspondence to assist him to get on.
Hello, Chair Moore. This is Noel. We are trying different avenues to go ahead and try to contact Dr. Brown and assist him via text, email, and phone. We're going to continue doing so just to make sure that yes, he can get in.
Chair Moore.
Okay.
This is Cheryl Grills. In the service of time and given that we have a quorum, might we go ahead and proceed?
Yeah, sure. We can proceed, but I'm just putting it on the record that Dr. Brown would like to be a part of the conversation for this agenda item and the other agenda items. So we need to make sure that he's included in this conversation. We need to do everything that we need to do to make sure he's included in the conversation.
Right. Yes, I do understand, and I think they are trying, but at this point, we don't have any idea how long it's going to take.
Okay, Member Groves, you can begin with your update.
Okay, so this is just, and I'm going to make this very brief again in the service of time. This is a brief update on where we are at with the listening sessions in terms of planning and activities. So we have now a sense of the calendar of listening sessions. Of course, one already was held in January. There's another listening session that's actually happening this week, and there will be listening sessions that are slated for April, May, June, and July. Some of the anchor organizations, in fact, will be holding multiple listening sessions rather than just a single session. What are the listening sessions going to be focused on? They're going to provide some basic information to all participants about reparations without taking a particular side or perspective about the definition of reparations or any aspects of reparations. And then the participants will be invited to share their thoughts on what forms reparations should take, who should be eligible, and also identifying the harms that have occurred with an emphasis on participants being able to share.
Member Grill, hear me? Over, I'm on the phone with Dr. Really missed the beginning of their presentation. Could you start over, please?
I couldn't understand you. You were breaking up. I'm sorry. You're on mute. I can't hear you.
As you were beginning your presentation, Dr. Brown called me again, trying to get on the line. So I did not hear the beginning of your update. Can you please start over? Thank you.
Sure. Okay, so this is just a quick synopsis of where things are at with the listening sessions. We now have a working calendar of when the reparation listening sessions will occur. Of course, one already happened in January. There's a listening session that's actually happening this week. And listening sessions are slated for April, May, June, and July. And I noted that some anchor organizations are actually holding multiple listening sessions, not just a single session. What will the listening sessions address? It will include educating participants about reparations, just the basics, without taking a position on or perspective on what reparations, how they should be defined, or other aspects of reparations. The listening sessions will also then look at and encourage participants to share what forms of reparations they would recommend, who should be eligible, and the harms that have occurred as a result of the period of enslavement to the present, with an emphasis on participants being able to share their personal and family stories of various forms of harm. The populations that are being targeted to participate in the listening sessions, some are just for broad, unspecified community audience. Some are targeting those typically overlooked, including foster youth, the unhoused, and formerly incarcerated. Some are looking at nonprofit leaders. Some are inviting Black student groups, housing advocates, youth age 16 and older, and elders 50 and older, And the listening sessions are covering a variety of regions of the state. The Reparations Task Force members are being and will be encouraged to sit in on the listening sessions while adhering to Bagley-Keene Act. And we will be sending, or Bunch Center actually, will be sending a list of the listening sessions once it's complete. And also as they become known, because some people are still in the planning stages. Finally, I want to mention that Professor Stoll and I are continuing to look for additional funding to make sure that all of the resources needed for the listening sessions are available. And so I'm happy to report that a California foundation awarded us $300,000 that will go to Bunch to support the communications firms and the work of the listening sessions. And I submitted another grant to another foundation on the East Coast. And I expect to be speaking with the program officer about that proposal, if not by the end of this month, the beginning of April. So that's just a quick update. But again, the important piece here is that the scheduling is happening. The communications firms are working with the anchor organizations, as well as the facilitator and the convener of the anchor orgs. And, we are continuing to round out funding, and we want the Reparations Task Force members to be involved, and you will be receiving information so that it can be organized in a fashion that the participation doesn't violate Bagley-Keene. That's my update.
Are there any comments or questions from other task force members related to this update? I can see everyone on the screen, so if you have a comment or question or concern, you can you can just say it. You can speak. Okay, so I do have a couple of concerns about the community engagement plan as it's been laid out or developed. And so I'll just state them now and, ask for an explanation from Member Grills. And then also, and we can talk about this tomorrow, see about agendizing this conversation around community engagement for the April hearing. So essentially, there's a few concerns that I have. Okay, for one, right, it is the public participants, in my own understanding as well, that the task force selected anchor organizations, which comprises of 7 organizations, should be organizing listening sessions and not the 2 communication firms, right? So to my understanding, that the 2 communications firms advertised an urgent advisory meeting on Wednesday, March 23rd, 2022. Those communication firms being AB Partners, led by Andre Banks, and Young Communications, led by Gwendolyn Young, right? That meeting that they held as an urgent advisory meeting on Wednesday, March 23rd, was clearly outside of their scope of work, right? The 2 communication firms were recruited to educate the California public generally about the task force and what we have planned, right? But instead what happened is that these 2 communication firms sent a Google form invite to select groups, which included a question about eligibility. And to my understanding, the 2 communication firms did not invite the anchor organizations to the meeting, which are the organizations that are actually supposed to organize meetings of this kind. In addition, the 2 communication firms advertised the meeting to be an hour long, but the meeting instead ended up being 15 minutes. And once the meeting started, the participants list and the chat function were disabled. They also gave members of the public who attended the meeting wrong information about the task force. For instance, someone asked for the Reparations Task Force website, and then Gwendolyn Young from Young Communications gave out the wrong email. She didn't even provide the website. She gave out an email, and it was the wrong email. So those are some of the concerns I have about the two communication firms. But then I also have some concerns about the Bunch Center. The Bunch Center, and I looked and analyzed and read through the contract between the DOJ and the Bunch Center. The Bunch Center has missed several deadlines for at least two deliverables explicitly stated in the contract. One being logistical support for listening sessions, and then also the creation of the website. Logistical support for the listening sessions was supposed to be communicated to the anchor organizations by January 31st, and the website for the listening sessions was supposed to be created last month on February 28th. Also, the Bunch Center has failed to meet with anchor organizations twice a month, as stated in the contract, and has failed to inform anchor organizations of their duty to provide them with logistical support, like recording equipment and technicians and location costs. In fact, some anchor orgs have reached out to me stating that they believe that they had to use their stipend for these recording equipment, technician, and other logistical support costs. Although the contract clearly states that the Bunch Center is supposed to be providing logistical support to these anchor orgs. So in summary, I'm putting on record my concerns, not only with the Bunch Center, but with the two communication firms that were also recruited by E-Member Grills. The two communication firms clearly hosted a meeting outside of their scope of work. They have not promoted or created any graphics for the hearings. In fact, I reached out to them via email asking if promotional graphics were a part of their deliverables, and they didn't respond, which then I had to create the flyers for myself. I had to create the flyers on my own to send out to social media. We have given the Bunch Center and these two communication firms upwards to $1 million to do a job, and they're not doing it by virtue of what has been stated in the contract. This is a serious concern, and that is why I know we don't have enough time because the agenda for this particular item is only set for 5 minutes, but these concerns have to be addressed sooner rather than later. I will be talking about this more tomorrow to entertain a motion to get a comprehensive conversation about this at our next meeting, and then also to see about opening up the process again. I think this is what Dr. Brown was pointing to at the beginning of this process, where he was calling for transparency. We may have to open up the process again to allow other folks the opportunity, other communication firms, other people like the Bunch Center, to come in and to give an open and public presentation to the public about what they can do and what deliverables they can bring to this process. So we'll talk about that more in detail tomorrow, but I just wanted to make those concerns.
Yes, thank you for doing that, Chair Moore, and I have to respond. I wish that you had taken an opportunity to give me some heads up about some of your concerns. I'm hearing this for the first time, and had you gotten in touch with me in advance, then we could have, or I could have done some of the work to have answers ready for you about these, but you did not. I will say, though, that communications firms, based on our discussion in our last meeting, have already been given notice that they are going to present at our April meeting. But in the meantime, I will speak with Bunch Center and with the communications firms about your concerns so that there's an informed response to the things that you have raised. I will note that I know the Bunch Center has had a number of challenges related to things above and beyond the control of the Bunch Center that have to do with the bureaucracy of the University of California systems and state of California regulations. And that has slowed things dramatically. And that is above and beyond their control. That's University of California rules and regulations and state of California policies. But again, I will definitely follow up with your concerns with both the Bunch Center and with both of the communications firms.
Thank you, Member Grills. I truly appreciate it. Is Dr. Brown on the call yet? Okay. Great. Yeah. My only concern is that this community engagement plan, you know, whether it's the Bund Center and the two communication firms more specifically should be the communication arm for the entire task force and not for one particular task force member. So,
oh, excuse me, what do you mean by that, Chair Moore?
Last meeting, you stated that you wished for there to be more community engagement, listening sessions on the question of the community of eligibility, and then the two communication firms, you know, organize an urgent advisory meeting on the community of eligibility.
Please,
and they're supposed to be, they're not supposed to be
not put these things together. They have nothing to do with one another. What I said in the last task force meeting, please, has nothing to do. I was as surprised to see that urgent net session coming to light. That had nothing to do with anything that I said and has nothing to do with them responding to me. So let's just make sure we have our facts straight, okay?
Okay, thank you for clarifying. So we will move on. Thank you again, Member Grills, for your update. So we will move to the next item on the agenda, which is information, discussion, and potential action items, Department of Justice updates.
All right, good morning, Madam Chair and members of the task force. I have just a few updates to provide this morning for your information and potential action item. First, during the February meeting, there was a request for DOJ to circulate a doodle poll gauging the availability of the task force members for a May meeting in the event that there was a desire for the task force to convene. The schedule of future meetings that Chair Moore and Member Lewis presented for your consideration, which was approved by the task force, did not include a May meeting. The next meeting after the April meeting is to take place currently in July after publication of the task force report on June 1. Notwithstanding this decision, if there is business that the task force feels must be taken up at a May meeting, we want to provide the opportunity for you to share with the task force so that DOJ can either turn its focus to planning a May meeting or continue in our efforts to obtain a quorum and location for an in-person meeting in July. Are there any questions or comments on that point? Okay. Moving on to the April meeting. As you all know, the next meeting of the task force is approximately 2 weeks away, April 13th through the 14th. In keeping with the public notice requirements under Bagley-Keene, the agenda must be posted by this Friday, April the 1st. The task force voted in the February meeting to spend 1 day of the April meeting receiving testimony on various issues related to education. And that means that we must expeditiously confirm these witnesses. I would appreciate if you would forward the names to us no later than the close of business on Monday, April the 4th. Due to the sunset on Governor Newsom's executive order suspending the in-person meeting requirements under Bagley-Keene, all witnesses must appear in person for the April meeting, which will be held at the Third Baptist Church in San Francisco. Task force members who will be unable to travel to San Francisco for next month's meeting, but who wish to appear telephonically must notify DOJ by noon this Friday, April the 1st, as we will need to post the location from where you will be appearing telephonically, which must be physically accessible to the public. The next item that I would like to raise with you is to seek direction from the task force on how it would like to see witnesses confirmed for future meeting. In preparing for the March meeting, DOJ staff was presented with a unique circumstance whereby the task force members provided a large number of potential witnesses. A large number of those individuals confirmed their interest and availability, more than could be accommodated by the time that the task force had allotted for a particular topic. The decision of which witnesses are selected to provide testimony or to expand or limit the amount of time determined by the task force for each topic falls outside of DOJ's role to provide administrative, legal, and technical support to the task force. Therefore, we're looking for you to institute a system by which the task force will decide which witnesses are confirmed for any given panel, particularly when the number of confirmed witnesses exceeds the time for that topic. And in setting out this system, we recommend that objective bases be utilized to decide which witnesses are included and which are not. And we can work with you to prioritize witnesses who are not included for future meetings. Do any task force members have any thoughts or ideas on this particular point before I move to the next?
Can I, this is Lisa Holder. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I am having some technical difficulties, so I'm not sure whether I can be seen or heard. I do have a comment and a reflection regarding this item. Now, my understanding was that at our last meeting, we were very specific that we wanted only a few witnesses to address some very specific concerns about the issue of eligibility. At our last meeting, we indicated that we wanted witnesses to come in and talk to us about issues regarding genealogy, etc. And we specifically said that we wanted no more than 1 hour witnesses because we wanted to spend a significant amount of time discussing the issue of eligibility. We did not want to be limited to 1 hour like we were at the last meeting. Now, somehow, there are now 10 or 11 witnesses allotted to that small period of time that was designated for witnesses at this meeting. I do not know how that happened when the task force specifically gave a directive that we only wanted a few witnesses and we wanted to make sure that we could get to the issue of eligibility to discuss as a task force by 11 o'clock. So when I believe that when the task force as a collective gives a directive and votes on it at meeting, that directive needs to be followed in whatever transaction takes place to put the agenda together. That did not happen at this meeting.
Thanks. I believe Dr. Brown, he has something to contribute to this actual point. I think that's really the reason why he wanted to be a part of this part of the discussion as well. I actually agree with you, Member Holder, completely. I was under the same understanding as well, and full transparency, we're letting it all out. So when we first got the first draft of the agenda, it included 6 genealogists, 3 recommended by myself, 1 recommended by Member Grills, and then 1 recommended by Member Holder. So everything was fine. And then so 6 was enough, right? Then there were 2 additions by Member Grills of Dr. Greg Carr and Jessica Ann Ayuwar. They're not genealogists, not sure what their expertise is in the conversation around eligibility, aside from them obviously having their own position around it. And so there was a conversation between Vice Chair Brown and myself where we wanted to exercise our authority as chair and vice chair, as you all elected us to do, to finalize the agenda, to take Dr. Greg Carr and Jessica Ann Ayuwar off the agenda so that it could be just those 6 people, right? Understanding that the directive was this particular hearing on eligibility, the panel should be no longer than an hour, right? Then we received word from the DOJ that the chair and the vice chair, we don't have the authority per se to confirm witnesses or to remove witnesses from the agenda after they're confirmed already by members of the task force. So then I posed a question to the DOJ, and I think this is what Damon is pointing to. where he's asking for people's opinions and thoughts. Let's say as a 9-member task force, we all reach out to 3 people, right? And they all confirm, each confirm, right? So that's like 27, 30 people who are confirmed. What do we then do? Do we hear 30 people for one panel, or does the chair and the vice chair have the authority to select amongst those 30 people who will be a part of the final agenda, right? It was under Vice Chair Brown, in my impression, that we do have that authority. But then the DOJ, namely Attorney Newman, Attorney Brown, and Parliamentarian Johnson, told us that we don't have that authority. And so that is how all of these names appeared on the list. So I hope that answers your question.
Madam Chair.
Oh, yes, Vice Chair Brown, you're recognized.
First, good morning and good afternoon to everyone. I'm apologizing for not being able to be on the call. However, because of technical difficulties with Blue Jeans, and in my estimation, this task force not receiving the kind of quality and transparent engagement over the affairs of this task force. And let me say personally here, this whole enterprise should be about the people, the people's agenda, and no one's ideological, private position. I want to say that again. This task force should be about the people's agenda and no one's ideological, private, political position. And I'm appealing to every member of the task force to remember we are representing the legacy and the dignity of a people who were wronged in this nation. This is the scene of the crime. It's our house is on fire, and not everybody's house in the block. That's not to say we should not be concerned about others when their house is on the block, on fire. And I think it's time that we use facts, logic, and common sense. Other thing that concerns me greatly is when it comes to engagement of people to be heard, it should actually mean the engagement of everybody. And from what I have witnessed, listening, not speaking, but listening, here recently there have been certain groups who, yes, they're entitled to their position, who have been positioned to becloud and compromise the process. And I feel it's our moral responsibility, the chair and vice chair, to give leadership, not to be dictatorial, not to refuse everybody being heard. We're about that. Over all the resource that I have and the love that I have for my people, I'm not going to be quiet in the face of what can prove to be our being set up for failure. Set up for failure. And what I hear happening, what has been kicked around about inclusivity, that's fine, that's great, that's good. But are we gonna act like we live in a country where there are no political realities, no laws? Are we just gonna go through an exercise and end up at the end of the day coming up with no measurable outcomes whatsoever? We must be looking for outcomes. I end with this, Madam Chair, and I thank you for giving me this personal privilege you said. There's an old story. Yes, it's a fable, but it has a truth in it. The story is told about Dr. Grasshopper and Mr. Centipede. Dr. Grasshopper was always giving advice about this and that, what ought to be done. But Mr. Centipede had a problem. With all of those legs, couldn't get around. So one day he went to consult Dr. Grasshopper and said, Dr. Grasshopper, my life has been difficult. For all of these legs, I don't have the mobility that I deserve. Said, what should I do? Dr. Grasshopper said, well, if you become a butterfly, you'll be able to just flop your wings and move from limb to limb and spot to spot. And you won't have a care in the world. Mr. Centipede said, that sounds great. That's good. But how do I become a butterfly? Dr. Grasshopper's retort was, oh, that's a practical, tactical issue. I only give advice and say what ought to be done. My friends, are we doing justice to this process? If we're only about what ought to be and are not positioning ourselves to be practical, social, political engineers who at the end of the day, will have more that we will have done of just giving presentations and analysis. As I said before, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., my late teachers, once said to a group of us during the movement days, my God, if you all don't stop talking and going around in circles, we're going to make this thing a paralysis of an analysis. And I plead with respect, with passion, that as I am not able to be with you today, I'm here in Washington, D.C. Why am I here? At the White House. To witness Joe Biden signing that Emmett Till Anti-Lynching Act that took this nation 104 years to come around to even through the U.S. Congress, saying Black folks have value and we are more than 3/4 human. We are people, persons whose dignity should be regarded and respected. So my friends, it shouldn't have happened. But if it took this nation 104 years to get around to respecting our worth and saying that it was wrong to lynch a Black person, ought we not have common sense enough to see that it is our moral obligation as this task force to work to come up with a measure that will give us a practical step toward doing something for people who've been enslaved in this country and built this economy of this nation when cotton was made king and all other things that we've done. That ought to be our task. That ought to be our challenge. And that ought to be our practical duty so that whatever we come up with, it will bring a better quality of life for our people. Yes, I know a whole lot about Pan-Africanism, Pat Moore, Marcus Garvey, and they were great men. And they had great vision for Black people. But what we're dealing with in this instance is about what we're going to do to bring some healing to those folks who were wronged in this nation. I have the facts of where my grandfather was enslaved in Franklin County, Mississippi, 1821. The evidence is there. And it's disingenuous, in my estimation, for any of us to say you can't find the record. The record is on high. Since the U.S. Census has been taken, and with all of the technology that we have in this nation, and many of us as scholars, I think we are not looking for enough to say we cannot quantify what enslavement was in these United States of America over 240 to 250 years almost. So thank you for hearing me. But again, remember, we got a task, we have a charge to keep, and we should not let the governor, the assembly, any of them have an excuse to say, we can't do what ought to be done to be fair about Black people who deserve reparations because of the law that says you can't do this and you can't do that. No, we got to be smart. That's what we got to do. And at the end of the day, be the winners.
Thank you, Vice Chair Brown. I just want to make a note of time that we're 15 minutes behind on the schedule, and I know that you're in Washington, D.C. right now, so you're on Eastern Standard Time. So this is just a friendly reminder that the task force will discuss the community of eligibility from 1:15 to 3:15 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So that's 4 o'clock, 4:15 Eastern Time to 6:15 Eastern Time. So just putting that on your purview.
Someone please text that to me because I'm in a spot where I'm not able to.
Yes, I will text it to you. And
thank you.
hopefully the DOJ will also be in steady communication with you as well. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay, so thank you. In interest of time, I don't know, essentially to Damon's point, again, member holder, Vice Chair Brown and I share your concerns. We, received a particular directive from the task force in terms of the particular types of people we wanted to hear from. That was on the first agenda with those 6 genealogists. Then, the girls invited Jessica Ann Iowar and Greg Carr, who Vice Chair Brown and myself believe should not be a part of the agenda. But then the DOJ told us that we didn't have any authority to remove anyone from the agenda after they were already confirmed by task force members. So then that begs the question, and I think that get clarity from it, and we could talk later on about this in the interest of time. But again, it goes to the question. Let's say there's 30 people confirmed. Does the chair and the vice chair have the authority to vet and confirm and finalize the witness list? The DOJ said that the task force did not give us that authority. So if that's the case, there needs to be a motion or something to clarify the scopes and powers of the chair and vice chair as bestowed upon by the rest of the task force members.
Madam Chair, if I could just respond and again to member Holder's question. One thing I did want to clarify, when the agenda that we sent to you had 8 confirmed witnesses, 2 witnesses that you referenced, Gregory Carr and Jessica Ann Iowar, those were not witnesses that Member Gross had belatedly proposed to us. She had submitted those names within the time that we had requested witnesses to be provided to DOJ. They were included on the agenda after we had made contact with them and confirmed their availability and interest to be presented for consideration. So the 8 members that we submitted to you and Dr. Brown for review did contain those names. It was after the conversation that we had about the agenda that I believe 3 additional names were added, I believe by you, to the agenda, that the time that was originally allotted was expanded to where it was. So to member Holder's question as to how the agenda got to the point where we had 11 witnesses and an hour and a half time, that was a decision that was subsequently made by the chair and the vice chair. I think Chair Moore's point is accurate in the fact that we do feel that there is a need to clarify if for any other reason so that the individuals who are tasked and delegated certain authorities have a firm understanding of the scope of that authority. And again, more directed as it relates to DOJ, that we have firm direction on what our role should be in assisting you with the confirmation of witnesses to comport with any directive given as to the time frame in which you'd like to hear from witnesses. So I will defer back to Chair Moore in terms of whether this is something that we continue to have a discussion with now, or if there's another point in the agenda where a more robust discussion of this would be appropriate. And then I only have one other point to make, just logistically for the rest of the meeting today.
Thank you so much. You can proceed.
Okay. The other point I wanted to make was, as we move forward, there may be additional issues that we need to resolve between this meeting and the April meeting, as we continue to consult with the task force experts on their thoughts, including specifically as we develop the executive summary of the report. In order to facilitate this communication, we recommend that the task force consider designating 2 members as an advisory committee to work with us and the experts to receive and potentially incorporate edits, which would then be brought back to the full task force for its consideration and final approval at the next meeting, when we anticipate that the full report will be voted on. I know that that the task force designated Chair Moore and Member Lewis as an advisory committee to work with the experts on setting up the framework for the scope of work, and certainly if it's your prerogative to designate them to continue to work with the panel of experts on some of these other issues, that would certainly be your choice, or to designate other individuals to do so. We just want to make sure that the expert panel is able to effectively communicate its thoughts back to the task force, and to do so under the restrictions that we're under. So that's another action item that I wanted to submit for your consideration.
This is Member Holder. I think these are important action items, but I really think that we need to stay on task right now and get to the witnesses and get to the discussion on eligibility. So I would ask that we table some of these important items to unfinished business for either today or tomorrow.
Very, very good. We can do that. The last point I'll just make, as everyone has observed, we've been having some challenges with Blue Jeans today. Our staff has been on with Blue Jeans all morning trying to troubleshoot some of these issues. And so one thing that we think we're going to try to do is to log off at the lunch break, if everyone can log off of Blue Jeans and then log back in at whatever time Chair Moore determines that we'll reconvene after the lunch break. So that we can try to reset some of the internal operations of the platform to hope to have a better service in the afternoon. So that concludes my updates, and as directed at the conclusion of today or at some point tomorrow, we can take up some of the additional items that I raised. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, had some technical difficulties, but I'm back on. So yes, we will table the discussion on those points, namely also Jovan and I's advisory hearing update in terms of future hearing proposals will be moved to unfinished business, as well as this discussion about chair and vice chair authority around the agenda and the other points raised by Damon. We'll move it to unfinished business so that we can move along with the rest of the agenda. So
Madam Chair,
the next item, it's 11:50. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes, I would ask you to do it by consensus. You don't have to go through a formal motion, but you need to have the agreement of the body. So you can do it by consensus. Mm-hmm.
Okay, we were texting and you didn't say that, but okay, thank you. All right, so consensus. I guess we can just start with Don Tamaki.
That's fine. I think that's a real practical approach. Totally in agreement with it.
Okay, thank you. Member Grills, are you okay with that? Member Grills, are you okay with that? Okay. Member Scott Lewis?
Yes.
Okay. Member Holder?
Agreed.
Member Montgomery Stepp?
Yes, I'm fine with that.
Member Jones Sawyer? Member Bradford? Vice Chair Brown?
Yes.
Well, that is everyone. Okay, so we will move on. So now the agenda is lunch. All right, the short one, because the agenda is supposed to start at 11:45. The next panel is supposed to start at 11:45. Please excuse us for the technical difficulties and the time. Okay, also need to go back to the task force members. Should we start at 11:45 or should we delay? And 11:45 is in 5 minutes.
This is Member Grills. I think that we really need to be able to be informed for our discussion. So if task force members are able, I would suggest we move forward. And if we need to go get a snack or a bio break, we just put ourselves on mute and black out our camera and come back when we can.
Okay, thank you. Any opposition to that? Okay, hearing no opposition, actually agree. We can start promptly at 11:45. And so we have about 5 minutes as a break. Thank you.
And we should log on and log off, correct?
Yes, excuse me, this is Trini. I am going to have to stop the entire meeting. So this goes for the audience members as well. Yes, I have to stop the entire meeting so that Blue Jeans can clear their servers and get us back on track. So to log back on when the meeting reconvenes, and he says it'll only take about a minute to do. So we should have enough time in those 5 minutes that you've allotted.
Okay.
However, everyone will need to log back in. Okay?
Okay. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to stop the meeting now, and you can log back in after I've stopped. He said it won't interfere with anything. Moderators, please do not log in until I tell you. Thank you.
All right. Well, it looks like it's going to be a real quick break. So if we're going to set up for a part 2, we should probably get on that. But as far as what we heard this morning, what you think?
Very interesting. I think a lot of people decided to comment on lineage eligibility. So hopefully the task force will definitely take that into consideration.
Yeah, the comments were overwhelmingly in favor of lineage-based reparations. So hopefully the task force will take that into account when they make their decision later this afternoon.
Yep. So, CEO, you want to give a quick comment if you're available to do so, and then we're gonna head out to break and then hopefully get the stream back up.
Hey, yeah, there is action-packed drama filled today. I'm still in my feelings because I didn't get an opportunity to do a public comment, so I'm gonna have to send that in so it makes it to the record or call in tomorrow. But there's a lot going on today. It's kind of action-packed, like I said. So, well, we'll be back in a couple of minutes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
back in a couple of minutes. It looks like everybody needs to log out of Blue Jeans and log back in, and then check back at ETM Media Group YouTube for the second half of the 8th California Reparations Task Force meeting.
All right, fam. See you back.